ordinance number 29-2021, permitting cannabis establishments as a conditional use within the light industry district in the township.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you want to buy cannabis today, you do not need to wait for this ordinance. Cannabis is sold today in Teaneck. Our police tell us this when they send us the information on what they do. In fact, the decision on whether to sell it here is not a decision we will have an opportunity to decide as a council. The decision we have before us is whether or not the seller is going to be a licensed proprietor with adequate safeguards or someone else. Now, people have mentioned the issue of gateway drugs as saying some people started with cannabis. This is absolutely true. In fact, part of the problem with illegal sales is that when the bastard selling the cannabis has MDMA or heroin or Vicodin or something else in his pockets, they can open the gate and let you through there. But I really want some of those that are opposed here to travel up to Massachusetts. Go with your fears and with your apprehensions and see if you come back home with them. Go take a look at what the legal markets have done. Take a look at how they contribute to the communities around them. As a more general issue, I want to touch on the drug war because for decades, we fought both sides of the drug war. Market forces fueled by Americans purchasing illegal drugs went up against and quite handily overpowered the might of the United States of America. What we want to do here, and the people in New Jersey have voted for, is to use those market forces to help destroy illegal sales. And we should be clear. There's a reason no one creates a Chinese restaurant next to another Chinese restaurant unless you want it to go out of business. You know, our initial area is limited. And for that reason, coupled with the fact that the state's not creating many licenses initially, we didn't need to include limits. That's not always going to be the case. Eventually, if we move beyond this area to other sections of town, that indeed will change. And that should start with public meetings and forums. And if the people attending are similar to the ones that have reached out to me as I'm walking down the street or reached out to meet with the subcommittee, well, I think you're going to be in for a big surprise as to how many people are in favor, because it wasn't a coincidence that so many people, 10,000 in Teaneck alone, voted in favor of not just decriminalization. That wasn't the question on the ballot. The question on the ballot was whether or not there should be markets. I encourage you to take a look at what that question actually said. It's right here. Do you approve of amending the Constitution? The state commission created to oversee the state's medical cannabis program would also oversee personal use cannabis markets. That is a big deal. And take a look at what the market forces are doing. This is the Washington Post this week. Legal marijuana has become easier to access in the US than Mexico, so people are bringing it there. Their Mexican president is so worried about the issues of employment that he's wondering what to do with American cannabis flowing into Mexico. This is a very big step as far as market forces go. Now, one other thing I really want to mention, as Mr. Martindale said, alcohol is far more dangerous in terms of societal effects. As an avid consumer of history, I took a deep dive into what it looked like here in Teaneck when we got rid of alcohol prohibition, and I'll spare you most of it. But I will say that you'd be shocked at a lot of the similarities. At teanecktoday.com, I blogged year by year about what it looked like under prohibition of alcohol. I encourage you to take a look. The regular Democratic Organization of Teaneck, which today is TDMC, came out against alcohol prohibition ending then too. Some of the issues here raised were very important. I can't think of a more important issue than jobs or driving, where issues such as testing for sobriety. I spoke to the superintendent of our schools about that issue. That issue already exists. And what he said was, we could test for alcohol, but what about Vicodin and heroin, or of course, cannabis? If a teacher, God forbid, came to class stoned, and that has not happened, by the way, but he said if it did, Superintendent Irving assured us that there are processes and procedures that are currently in place to deal with those kinds of circumstances, and the same policies and procedures would cover cannabis. So I really appreciate the reason that people have given for coming out, and I don't want to minimize those worries, but I do want to assure you that there are answers to those worries. And finally, as Councilwoman Organ mentioned, this isn't our final set of rules. We have a license requirement here, and that purpose is not, as some has mentioned, to choose winners and losers. The purpose is to ensure that the letter and spirit of the way we expect these stores to operate is adhered to appropriately. And as the state finalizes those rules, we will likely have many fora and speak to the public and updates on those rules. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.